Recently, I completed the remaster of 2004's cult hit dungeon crawler Kowloon High School Chronicle, and while I love the game, it was a tough undertaking that took a lot out of me. Defeated and somewhat drained, I found myself needing to recharge the old batteries. For me, one of the best ways to do that is to curl up with a familiar classic or dip into a lighthearted visual novel. Something you can just chill with and not worry about getting too invested, and something that doesn't overstay its welcome or can just be dropped at any time. You know, something that requires a very low level of commitment. Tokyo School Life is a visual novel that fit that bill to a T, and I'm glad it was under these conditions that I played it because it might not be very good for much else. Though this game had its English debut back in early 2015 on Steam, I didn't actually pick it up until... When did I pick this up again? Until sometime after the physical release on Switch in 2019. The physical release was handled by P-Cube, but the game was developed by M2 using the emote engine, which some of you may recall from a game I reviewed previously, Song of Memories. Curiously, Song of Memories was originally intended to come to Switch as well. However, that version ended up getting cancelled as they seemed to be having issues getting the full version of the emo engine running on the console, as it can be surprisingly resource intensive, which may also be why other games like PlayStation Vita's Dengenki Bunko Fighting Climax ended up using the light version of the emo engine instead of the full one. But we're not here for a history lesson about the emo engine and whether or not it could run on Switch. I just thought it was nice to finally see it there. After all, it opens up a whole new small world of possibilities. So let's start by looking at one of those possibilities. Let's look at Tokyo School Life, starting with the story. So despite this being the kind of game I needed right now, it bears mentioning that the first hour of this game is cringy as hell and almost had me putting it back on the shelf. If it wasn't for the short runtime, a single route taking 4 hours and the whole game taking less than 7, I probably would have, but I figured it was a small gamble to take, and people in my Discord, link in the description, assured me it's mostly just the beginning that had the issues I was struggling with. The thing is, we play as a particularly embarrassing type of weeaboo. His name is set to John Smith by default, which I promptly changed to Tark Kart to reflect my inner desire to ascend to a kart racing game personified. No offense to the 8 million John Smiths in the world, but that name simply felt too common. So John Smith, or rather Tark Kart here, is an immigrant coming to Japan as an exchange student. Japan, in his eyes, is the perfect ideal culture, and Japanese women are the ideal girlfriend. Upon landing here, he wonders if everything will go exactly as it does in his Japanese anime and manga, with all the tricks, tropes, and tired cliches accounted for. And to nobody's surprise, the self-aware Tokyo School Life that wants to have its cake and eat it too relishes in these exact anime tropes. As he's running late for his first day of school, Tarkart blue shells another student who is also running late for school, and what's that? His hand landed where when they tumbled? How embarrassing. This is Tarkart's first introduction to one of the 3 girls we'll be spending the game with. As we find out later, Tarkart, along with Kairin, Sakura, and Yaoi will be sharing a dorm with each other, and thus begins Tark's year of embarrassment, cultural education, and romance. Though a small cast of characters, I rather enjoy the female trio, liking their chemistry with each other more than I actually ended up liking their chemistry with the player character. Karin is by far the most aggressive or defensive of the bunch, the mother hen character, who of course has a secret, more rambunctious, adventurous side to her. Aoi, though the smallest of the bunch, is actually the toughest. Something of a tomboy character, she studies martial arts not to beat people up, but to be able to protect those in need should the occasion ever arise. Sakura is the pure maiden type, soft-spoken, delicate, but also deceptive and cunning, a skill she needs to maintain her facade and keep her less socially palatable interests under wraps. From where we left off, we really just engage in a bunch of slice-of-life moments, spending time with the girls and getting to know them better. Along the way, we come to key decision points, of which there are really only 8. Your answers here feed into something of an affinity system, which will determine what endings and routes you can unlock before completing the game. It takes about 2 hours before the game prompts you to pick which route you want to complete, and though I only unlocked 2 on my first run through and had to go back for the 3rd, it is possible to have all 3 open at once. Or, well, technically there is a 4th that you cannot open along with the rest, but it's the bad end route, which you only unlock by answering nearly every question wrong. If you just drop a save before the route prompt, you won't need to go through the first 2 hours again. Just load your save and continue on the other routes. Of course, I highly recommend you do this, and the game will make it pretty obvious when it's about to happen. The routes themselves, of course, arcs, like the game, are very short, at around 1.5 to 2 hours apiece. Structurally, the game feels like it has a semi-traditional 3-act layout. Act 2 ends at the split in the storyline. Then after the split, each route feels like a mini 3-act story in and of itself, which of course makes up the 3rd act of the overarching story. So yeah, you know, it's a typical 3-act story with 5 acts. These routes aren't bad, but like the game itself, they're also just not amazing. Just a light treat to indulge in for a day or two, then move on. I found myself enjoying Sakura's route the best. She's a cute character with personal struggles who really comes into her own over her story. This arc in general though turns into something of a medical drama that made me feel like I was playing a pale imitation of Katawa Shoujo, and in that regard it did leave a bit to be desired. I especially found myself wishing they got more into detail on the actual medical stuff rather than leaving it up to vagatories about illnesses, cures, practices, and trial run experimental miracle drugs. It felt to me here that the writers really didn't know much about what illness they wanted the cast to be afflicted with, just that they knew they wanted it to be an element, so they faked their way through it. I mean, come on guys, just watch a couple episodes of Scrubs, you'll have all the knowledge you need in no time. Or fuck it, watch an episode of House and give everybody lupus.
This is lupus.
Treat him for lupus.
I think your son has lupus.
Suffice to say the least, though, it proved to be the most emotionally investing arc of them all, and I did rather enjoy it. If there's one theme that seems to recur in every route, however, it's that of the characters learning to be more open about who they are. Tarkart's influence on them helps them overcome their reservations about revealing parts of themselves that might otherwise be looked down upon or shunned in Japanese culture. Similarly, these girls help Tarkart understand that Japan isn't quite the weeaboo paradise his anime and manga had led him to believe it was. But that's done to a much lesser extent, which is kind of a shame, really. Had this been able to get more into the culture shock that people like this might experience when running headlong into a country they have a somewhat false assumption of, it might have served a greater purpose to me than just a palate cleanser. But alas, it is what it is. A cute, endearing, and ultimately forgettable experience. But it does serve one additional purpose. This visual novel doubles as a language tutor. Mind you, it's not a language tutor for beginners at all. It's not like it comes pre-packed with lessons or anything. But for those already a bit into their education, you can test your skills and sharpen them by having all the text in the game displayed in a second language with multiple alphabets to choose from. This is a cool feature that I would love to see more visual novels support. But it's also not a feature I used, and I found it cluttered the screen space quite a bit. I'm not versed enough to be able to grasp any of this, so for me it was just a distraction. So I turned it off and played this game like I would a normal visual novel. So maybe we can say I played it with only half the intended experience, and for those looking to play this to brush up on your katakana or hiragana or whatnot, you may get significantly more out of this than I did. You might not get the deep understanding of the culture the player character so desperately needs, but you may get a deeper understanding of their spoken and written language, which itself is invaluable. But aside from this, there's not much else to talk about. The emo engine looks great in motion, and though I've never been a huge fan of it, it is starting to grow on me. The art stills, though not numerous, are nice, and there's a good amount of camera work at play to liven up their events. The music is extremely by the numbers, but there's a couple zany Galgun or Paper Mario sounding tracks in here that I really enjoyed, and the voiceover work is simple yet fitting. I should mention as well that aside from the playable character, all of the main characters are fully voiced in Japanese, and the game does support auto-progress, conversation logs, and fast forwards. If I had any complaints left at all, it's more to do with the hardware of the system. Tokyo School Life allows a tap on the joystick to progress the text, which, if you're playing with Joy-Cons and you're one of the 20 million people with Joy-Con drift, can make this absolutely impossible to play at a reasonable pace. If you have drift, avoid your Joy-Cons at all costs. If you only have Joy-Cons and they have drift, hold off on this game entirely. It's not like it's an easy game to say it's worth the money as it is, but if you're interested, just know those things first and prepare for them. Goddamn Nintendo. So, in Tokyo School Life, I found my recovery from the brutality of Kowloon High School Chronicle. This was just the low-commitment slice of life that I needed to prepare for the inevitable nihilistic depression that Nier Replicant will surely instill in me. All my emotional energy has been restored and stored for that game's release, and I really can't wait for it, but that's where I'm gonna leave this video today. If you guys found this video helpful or useful at all, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you can. Links to all of my socials are in the description below, and as always, folks, thanks for watching.